Previously, we broke down the game's brief tutorial covering the basics of automation in Satisfactory, and today we're going to start the guided playthrough covering how to build the perfect starter factory, with the aim of this series giving each and every one of you the tools you need to get through to the end game. Now, as this will be a series, it's going to be a full series, I am going to try and get a video out each week, at least initially, to get us all onto the same page. And as such, this is going to be a much slower playthrough with less edited portions to make it hopefully easier to understand. I'm also going to use 2 cams, so we are using advanced game settings for that, but I will be doing everything without using creative mode so we can go through the whole process together. Now, having followed the tutorial, you should have the following temporary lines set up. One for iron rods, a temporary constructor for iron plates, wire and concrete, with the items all being stored. Now, I've cleaned up my build slightly so that everything is in one place, but you don't need to worry about this. As long as you're storing the resources, you'll have the same setup and be able to collect the items as and when you see fit. And we're going to expand on this, at least initially. Also, we are going to be covering everything, and so I do recommend, if you feel that you're slightly further ahead than the part that we're talking about, using the timestamps to jump to where you think it's appropriate, such as the start of the actual starter factory building. Now, if you do have the same setup, you'll notice that we are running a power grid at a max consumption of 39 megawatts, with our total capacity, which is these 2 burners, production of power being put together, being 40, because each of these can produce 20 megawatts each, as you can see here. As such, running at such high capacity, I know we're not peaking, but we are getting close to that, we will need to expand our power production first and foremost. From there, we are going to go over to the hub and start working on a few other things. We'll need to get through base building. This will be really important for building our factory. We'll want to do logistics to unlock splitters and mergers, followed by field research, because the MAM is going to be really useful later on, and then on to part assembly and obstacle clearing. We may even unlock this logistics mark II, but the rest will come in the next episode. So let's get started with our power. Now, for this, we can press Q to open our build menu. You can see here that we require 15 iron plates, 15 iron rods, and 25 wire to build one of these biomass burners. Now, the great thing about these is they produce up to 30 megawatts instead of the standard 20 from our hub over there. So we're going to just grab our resources that we need, and you can quickly look at what's in what container just by hovering your dismantle tool, which is opened by pressing F, over them. We can see we have our wire here. We also have our plates here and our rods here. Now, whilst this is going on, I am going to add some more ingots to our production over here, just so that we can start or continue producing our iron rods. But the important thing is that we are now going to get started on our power. So we are going to build just a couple of these, and we're going to place them in our hotbar, which is down here, by pressing associated number whilst we hover over here. So for this, I'm just going to press 0. You can see it's bound to the hotbar. Also, if you hold down Alt and then use the scroll wheel, you do have multiple hotbars available, up to 10 of them. Anyway, now that we've got the biomass burners in our hotbar, we can press 0 to select them, and then just in this open space, we're going to place 2 of these. Now, the great thing about these, other than the fact they produce more power, is also that they have inputs, which means later on, in this build, we're going to bring some resources and automatically feed them rather than have to hand feed them like the ones over there. With these placed, we do need to connect them to the grid. So we're going to press 2 to connect them to a power line and connect them together. And if we feed fuel to them, you'll notice that they can produce up to 60 production. It comes out as capacity because unlike other forms of fuel generation in Satisfactory, these only produce the megawatts if there is a building connected to these drawing from them. So if we were to connect this now to the grid, you'll see it's starting to burn these and you can see the production. The next thing that we need to do is to fill these with some biomass, which we can do by hand via here. I've actually done some already. The reason that we use biomass over wood and leaves is that it's much more efficient. If you click on here and go over to the fuel section, you can see it has a burn rate for each resource. The leaves burn at 120 per minute, so we need 120 of these leaves in order to provide 30 megawatts of power to our factory. Wood at 18 per minute, and biomass at 10. So biomass has a much slower burn rate, and also if we just quickly go over there, you'll notice that the wood, though it costs 4, it produces 20 biomass. So it's much more efficient to create biomass, and later on when we get a few resources free, we will unlock obstacle clearing, which will allow us to produce solid biofuel, which is even more efficient. Looking at the power grid, now that we have a max capacity of 100 megawatts, we can start to scale up this mini factory. And there are 2 things that we need to work on. I'm going to grab this miner. First off, we need to connect a smelter to our iron plates. This means that the iron plates will continue to produce, and we're also going to set up a constructor after our wire constructor here so that we can produce some cable for us, because we've got a lot of wire here. Now later on, due to these being pure, we will be able to split these resources, because you can see we're getting a lot more resource than we are able to consume at the moment. But until then, we can get started on another factory line. So we're going to use our Mark 1 miner here to bring resources around, and we can use the mouse wheel to rotate the item. And then we're also going to place a smelter directly in front of our constructor here. And just a heads up, if you're wondering how I selected this, all I've done is press the middle mouse button, and we're going to spin it, hold control so it snaps in position. And then hopefully if we press H, we can run around here and see that the output and the input are all aligned. So we'll place that down, and then we'll run a conveyor into there. And we're also going to run this conveyor into here. Next, we need to copy and paste the recipe of iron ore. So we're going to hold control and press C. And we're going to do Control V now. Alternatively, you can copy the settings down here and paste it. The next thing that we need to do, as you can see from the red light, is provide power to this. So to keep it easy, we're just going to add another power pole for now. And we're going to connect that with this miner that we just disconnected from the grid, this miner, and this smelter. If we click here, you can see that our production is now increasing, so we need more power to run these, and our max consumption, which is the line of power draw if all of our machines are running, is here. As you see these resources running into our smelter, or we can just put in the iron here, you'll see that once again the machines are powering on, and it's getting closer to that blue line. Let's now sort out the wire constructor over here. Now normally, if we're creating cable, you can see it requires 60 wire to 30 cable per minute. Unfortunately, this is only producing 30 wire per minute. So this is going to be inefficient, and we can't even build this because we don't have reinforced iron plates. That brings us to our first big problem today. We're going to be needing a lot of constructors, which means we're going to need to be producing by hand some reinforced iron plates to get us started. But don't worry about that just yet. Don't worry if your factory isn't particularly clean just yet. We will be sorting this all out shortly. But if you hold control while placing your constructors and your buildables, they should aligned to one another just to keep it a little bit cleaner, as you can see here. Now, I do recommend when you are starting off the game to experiment, not worry too much about the efficiency of your items or your factory, but just have fun. Get an idea as to how everything runs and how everything is connected together. Normally we wouldn't mix containers, but because we're only able to produce one item per minute and the cable and wire often go hand in hand together, we might as well just leave them in the same constructor. Anyway, the next thing we're going to do whilst they're producing the items is to start going through our milestones. Now, the first thing that I'm going to unlock is the base building. Though if you do not have the 200 concrete, you can go ahead and start doing things like the logistics. This is going to allow us to split resources between multiple lines and will be super useful later on. But anyway, we're going to get started with this one, and you can see here that we need 200 concrete, 100 iron plates and 100 iron rods. I have opened the milestone in the top right hand corner. This should be default set on for you. Mine was set off, but if you can't see it, go to options, then the user interface, and then scroll down and you can see here show the current milestone in HUD and show the current game phase in HUD if you need that. I will also mention that for this playthrough I've set the creature hostility to retaliate. We can cover combat with the creatures later on, but we do not want them constantly fighting us, so it's on retaliate for this, though you can set it to hostile if you want. Now, you can split stacks by pressing right click, or you can select a particular ratio by holding right click and then using the slider. You can also drag all of the items in by holding control and then left clicking, but for this we just need a couple of hundred, so we'll take that. So we can now send this off as the first hub milestone. So we're just going to hold shift and left click in order to send the items so that we don't have to drag them across. And from here we can send this off. This is going to send off the drop pod. Now, if we open up our second milestone, logistics, we can select it, but we cannot add any of our items until the pod returns in 1 minute 20 seconds. So whilst we wait, you might as well collect biomass. So whilst looking at items, hold E and you'll be able to just run around and collect them. But if you press tab and open up this, you can then close it pressing tab. And if you run around now, you'll automatically collect all the biomass. Well, the hub will be unlocked in 30 seconds. So we might as well return. In fact, you can see it coming down now. Whilst doing these, you may want to also harvest or produce some biomass. It could be well worth it during the down moments where you're not sure what to do for your starter factory. And we can now set off with this one. We're going to collect the items again. We'll send that off now. And once again, in 4 minutes this time, this will return. So whilst we do that, we're going to do a little bit of building, I think. So for this next section, we're going to do a little tutorial very quickly. We've only got a minute, but I do want to break down the splitting. So we're going to bring some power over here where we have another miner, and we're going to really quickly just build a few foundations. So we'll put that as 9. We're also going to grab our splitter and our merger here. Now, with the foundation, if you hold control, it's going to snap. This snaps it to the world grid, as you can see here. And the great thing about having foundations is that we're going to be able to snap items to the grid, so it's less freely placed, but this allows us to organize everything a lot better. Now, this miner is a Mark 1 on a pure miner. This means that we are going to get a total of 120 resource per minute. Obviously, we can't use that at the moment because we only have Mark 1 belts, which is 60 items per minute. But what we can do, this smelter can only consume 30 iron ore per minute. We have 60 on this belt here. So what we will do, if I just remove this really briefly, we're going to place a splitter just in or just behind the smelter here. We're going to run the belt into there. And we're going to also bring the iron ore into here. And we're also going to place another one just next door to it. And you can see here, if we connect these together, that the resources are now being split between these two outputs. And thanks to that, this machine is running at 100% efficiency. We can then on the outside use a merger to merge the 60 iron ingots all onto one line. So very basically, that is why the splitters and the mergers are really important. And this also means that you can split the resources between multiple lines as well, but also why it's going to be really beneficial to build on the grid. Anyway, with that done, let's just take all of these things and get back to base, because we're going to have to send something else off into space. Now, the next hub milestone that we're going to send off, I was thinking of doing field research, and this is really useful because it gives you the map as well as the MAM object scanner personal storage. But it might be, oh, you know what, we'll do it anyway because the map could be quite useful. We're not going to go into exploring too much for this video. It's more about the factory, but it's probably a good idea for us to send this off. I will mention, please do let me know if you feel we're going too quickly. You can take this part in your own time. I'm just trying to get to the next phase so that we can build this. And do let me know if you like the 2 cam setup, if you find that useful, because I worry doing everything on the ground might be a little bit confusing if we're not careful. Now we're going to very quickly send off the rest of these milestones. And we're next going to work on the assembler or part assembly. This is going to be really important for this video. I am going to also set up a screw line really quickly because we need to start producing that as well. But all of these factories will be torn down, or all of this will be torn down, our bare bones factory, once we've got the starter factory up and running. So, screws. The first thing that we're going to do is grab another smelter. And we're also going to place a splitter. Now these can be placed directly on the line should we wish. And from here we can split the resources into our other smelter here. We're also at a point where we need more cables and we don't have the joints available. So what we can do here is if we press on our power pole, which is 1 instead of R2, we can click on a wire and it's going to split that wire between a new pole, giving us a few more power connectors to use. Now that we're producing some more iron ingots, we're going to set this constructor, hopefully, well, it's going to be a bit tight, might not work. Yeah, what if? Place the resources over here. So we're going to line this up with that conveyor. Then we're going to add a constructor. I'm not bothered about the efficiency at this point in the game. We're just trying to produce a few items a lot. That is a little bit odd. Don't know why it wasn't allowing us to do that. And this is going to produce screws for us, but first we need to produce those rods. And there we go. So we're going to produce some rods and they're going to move up to the screws. As you can see, this only requires 10 rods per minute, but we're producing 15. So this is going to be inefficient, but it's just a necessity in terms of the resources for the time being. Once we build the starter factory, I assure you everything will be much more efficient. Whilst we wait for our screws, let's quickly have a look at the MAM. Now the MAM is where we do research. This is a really useful little machine because it allows us to research things that we find while exploring. We have the alien megafauna, which allows us to research DNA from the creatures that we kill. And this is going to be really useful for turning into protein and then DNA capsules. In fact, if we grab the, have we got any? Yeah, we got some alien DNA here. We can research these in the MAM And in doing so, we unlock the next section. And this can lead to weapons, inhalers for health, expanded tool belts and storage. So doing the research if you come across things in the wild is very useful. The same with your nutrients, and if you come across any power slugs, you will want to research them to unlock overclocking and underclocking of machines. But more on that later. The same goes for hard drives. In here we can search crash sites and their hard drives in order to unlock alternative recipes. But for this series, we're not going to concentrate on alternate recipes, just so that we can make the assumption that everyone has the same setup as us. If you do have alternate recipes and want to use them and don't know where to look, do check out my guide on the early game alternate recipes and my personal opinions on which are best in the early game. Right, let's unlock part assembly. With part assembly on the way, we can start to think about production. However, before we do that, I do want to unlock solid biofuel, as that's going to be really beneficial to us in the early game, and we can worry about this one later. However, with the assembler, we will now be able to automate reinforced iron plates. However, we do need rotors to do that, which means we're going to have to do a little bit of handcrafting while we wait. Don't worry, we will produce the reinforced iron plates and the rotors in this build, which we're about to move on to. But for now, just handcraft some rotors and reinforced iron plates. You're going to want, probably to just get started, let's go with 12 rotors and easily 8, 16, 24, probably about 100 reinforced iron plates. So just get started on them for now, and then once we're done with that, we will start building. This is the fun bit, and where it starts to really come into its own element. Now, the first section is going to be solely focused on the expansion of our factory and industry. We will do a little bit of decorating towards the end of this video, but it's mainly going to be focused on the production aspect. And finally, let's unlock the obstacle clearing. We will build a chainsaw immediately after this and then get started with the build. Now, the chainsaw is built in the equipment or workshop even. And from here you can see it. We only need one, but it is very beneficial. I'm also going to build an object scanner just so that we can briefly talk about that. So with the object scanner, if you move this into your hands, you can see once you search an item in the MAM here, so your for example, your nutrients, you can see it becomes a scannable object. There are also other items here. You can see it on your scanner. So if we're going towards it, apparently there's one here, you can see. This is going to be really beneficial when you're looking for things like Summer Sloop, Mercer Spheres, and the likes. But for now, you don't really need to worry about that. And then we have the chainsaw. Now, the chainsaw uses solid biofuel to run. And to produce that, we are going to have to convert biomass, so let's produce just a little here, into biofuel. This is the most efficient early game fuel source that you can get hold of, and it has a much slower burn rate for your biomass burners. Now, to use this, there are two modes. You can either hold R and have selected the single one. This will allow you to cut out maybe a single bush or tree. Or you can have the area mode, which you can also swap between by just pressing R. And this is going to greatly increase your efficiency when gathering biomass, but more importantly, you're going to get a lot more wood, as you can see there. Anyway, and one last thing I should mention that not many people know apparently, is if you do not like any of the sounds here, you can go down to your equipment volume or your factory volume, click this little triangle, and you can reduce the sound. For me, I find the chainsaw a little bit gnawing, and you can turn this down or up as much as you'd like. Anyway, with it being night, we're going to wait until day and then we're going to get started on the build. So we're at the bottom of the cliff now, and I'm going to start building here. So we're going to grab our foundation, and we want to start with a 4-meter foundation so that it's slightly further raised off the ground, and we're going to snap it to the world grid. So hold Control and then press it. Now when you are building a foundation or other buildables, you can hold E to open this radial dial, and associated items will be made available. So we can go to a 1 meter, or we can cycle through by pressing E to do 2 meters or 4 meters. There's also, if you press and hold R, the build modes. So we're going to be using Zoop. This is very powerful. It allows you to click once and then drag up to 10 in one direction to place multiple at once. This is the best thing until we have blueprints available, which will come later on. There's also vertical build mode, which we won't be using today, or at least probably won't be. And then default, which allows you to place one item at a time like that. Now we are going to start this build slightly higher up off the ground. So we're at 2 meters, well, we're at what, 8 meters up now? We're actually going to go up to that point. So we'll use a 2 meter there. And the reason for that, if we now run up there, again in Zoop mode, we can pull this across. We can see that other terrain around us is not going to clip through the floor, which makes life a little bit more difficult for us if that happens, though not impossible to work around. So from here, we're going to start off with building our grids. Now this is going to be quite big getting started because we have a lot that we're going to fit in there. I'm just going to fill out this area as well. Let's go across 8, and we're going to go, that's 4 foundations deep. We're actually going to go, I think, to 7 meters, 7 foundations, sorry, deep, because we are going to need a little bit of depth for this. At this point, we're going to get started with our biomass burners. Now, if we click on the biomass burner, we can see our solid biofuel burns at 4 per minute. And if we build a constructor really quickly, you'll notice we can produce 60 biofuel or solid biofuel per minute. So if we do basic maths, and we can make the game do this for us, we can press N in the quick search, and we can do 60 divided by 4, which is the amount of fuel we're producing by the amount of fuel used per minute. And that leaves us with a total of 15. That means we can run 15 of these per minute to one of these if it's working at full tilt. And for this, we're going to keep it really simple. We're going to do 3 biomass burners in a row, and we are going to eventually expand this 5 times. So it's going to take up a lot of space, but let's not worry about that for now. We just need to get this basic setup up and running. And we're going to place a splitter in front of the middle biomass burner. And then from here, we're going to run a line to the bottom. This will run to a splitter again in a little bit, but for now, all we need to worry about is, in fact, we can place the splitter down. We can place that there, and then this will run into our biomass or solid biofuel constructor. This is going to provide us with the power that we need to get this factory started, and we are going to expand on this, but we don't need to worry about expanding on it just yet. We're also going to place behind this really quickly, just temporarily, another constructor, and this is just going to be creating biomass from wood. And actually it could be a really good idea just to expand this section behind us, and we can add a little storage unit here. And we're going to place all of our wood in there. If you want, you can also place another one, and this one will be for your leaves as well. So we're just doing the same system. And the idea is that though this won't be efficient, we will be producing the biomass that we need for the solid biofuel. With that out the way, we're going to get this running for the time being. We can do that by just putting a little bit of biomass or solid biofuel in here to kickstart the system. And these should, if we've connected them, start to turn online. Now I'm going to put a series of power lines. I like to put them on the points to keep it nice and clean throughout here, just to make it so that it's nice and clean for us. Then we're going to place another power point just across. And you can see we are now producing our solid biofuel. And for the time being, we're going to let this run. This is a load balancer, by the way, that we will be doing. This is splitting the load between the three, balancing the resources. And once we perfect our ratios, everything should nicely run along. However, we are going to be using manifolds, which you will hear a term used a lot in the game as well for our production in the main. Now at this point, we have some solid biofuel being produced. We can leave this on its own. We do need to ensure that we have space here for another 4 rows. So we're looking at 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. This is another row, 4. Okay, so we're going to expand this out 2 more. And at this point, this is how wide this system will be. Although we can expand it up should we wish as well. But the next thing that we're going to do after this point, if we expand it slightly further so that we know there's a breakage, we're going to get started on our iron setup. Now for this, we are going to need a 9 wide grid. So let's start on this one, and it needs to be 12 deep as well. So if we go out to, well, if we include this one, 8 plus 1, 9. And then we're going to go 12 deep. So this is going to consume a lot of resources. This is why we haven't torn down our bare bones factory up there, because we are going to need to go back and use more resources occasionally. So that's 4, 12. Now I'm building this in such a way that you shouldn't need to worry so much about the inputs, because everything will be brought in order. So for this, we are going to start off with our iron, and this is going to require a fair amount of resources. We're going to need to start off with a couple of smelters and also some constructors. So first off, in the, let's say the second row, we are going to place in the center 1 smelter in each of the first 4 columns. Then we will have a space of 2 columns followed by 2 more smelters. Now each smelter is going to consume 30 iron ore. So we can tell from this we're going to need 3 normal nodes worth of ore per minute. That's 180 iron ore. So this set are going to use 60, this set 60, and that set 60. And we're going to grab a splitter, and when it goes orange, we will go to straight mode with our straight belts, and we will merge them. So just in between, and the first time it goes orange, there we go, we can place them together. Do that for all 3 of them. And next we need to think about how we're bringing the iron in. So for me, I'm going to bring them all along the, we're going to have to expand this. So we've got space for 2, but we do need a 3rd one. So I am going to add another one. I'm sorry for not mentioning that before, but I am doing this pretty much off the top of my head. So we're going to have to ad-lib some of it. Now with the 3rd one, we're going to bring this alongside. In fact, we can make it cleaner. Let's bring them all onto the very first section. That way it's not so cramped. And we're using the straight conveyor belt mode. This is the easiest way of setting up right angles. You can change that by pressing R if you want to, but I don't recommend it. Now, before we turn this all on, we are going to connect it to the power grid to see how much power it is going to consume. This is really important. We don't want to blow a fuse straight away. And speaking of power, we are going to place our power lines just behind and next to our splitter there. Now, until they're provided with power, this red light is going to stay red. There's also a yellow light. That means that it is waiting for some resource or the recipe is incorrect because it's waiting for the wrong resource. And then there's a green light, which means everything is running. And a blue light means that it is overclocked. So we'll bring it up to here for now and connect these together. And now you should see all of the lights have turned yellow. On top of this, if we click on our power pole, you can see that our capacity is 90. And currently our total consumption on this grid will be 36 megawatts. So we are going to have to expand this in a little bit. Next, we need to place our constructors. For this, we do have a lot that we are going to be placing. So first of all, directly in front of the first 3 smelters, we're going to place a constructor. Hold control to snap it in line. And these are going to be producing our iron plates. So they're a 1-to-1 ratio of the iron ingots on the output. So 30 iron ingots, and it's going to consume 30 iron ingots, which is why we don't need to use any splitters. For our second section, which is this 4th smelter, we're going to place 2 constructors. This is going to produce our iron rods. Now, iron rods consume 15 iron ingots per minute, which is why we have 2 constructors. But that does also mean that we need to split the resources from this smelter between the 2. So we're going to grab a splitter here, and we're going to have it so that it goes directly out of the smelter into a splitter, with the middle line flowing through to the first constructor, and then the left output going to the second one. And this should produce 30 iron rods per minute, whilst we should also be producing 60 iron plates. Next to this, we're going to be placing another 2 constructors. These will be producing iron rods as well. In fact, we're going to place another 2. So this is 6 in a line, all producing the iron rods. And similarly to what we've done here, we're going to mirror that on this side. So we're going to place this splitter directly in front with the iron feeding through and also going to the right. And then the opposite way around here to the left. And I'm going to place the power, I think, just in this little nook here. And we'll do that every 2 constructors. That means that we can connect to 2 and have kind of a daisy chain between these. Once we reach the end, we are going to connect that to the grid. We can connect that just to the smelter in front. And once again, we can see that now our max consumption, if everything's running full tilt, it's going to be 68 megawatts. We still have a little bit of overhead here at 90 capacity. Okay, so at this point, we have all of the first stage of constructors for our iron line. However, we are going to have to do some merging and splitting for the next section. So with our iron plate constructors here, you're going to want to place a splitter in front of the middle one, and it can be right in front of the output there. And we're going to want to place a merger in front of the 2 others. So what we're doing here is splitting the 20 in this constructor between 2 other outputs, so that we have a 30 line and a 30 line. Make sure that everything is connected. And we're going to have 1 line come out, but we don't need to worry about it just yet. And we're going to have another one, which for this we're going to use an elevator. Again, we do not need to worry about it just yet, but just have it facing forwards. The idea with this is we're going to send one of these, this one, to become reinforced iron plates. And this one will go to our storage area. Next, let's have a look at our rod section. So for the rods, the first 3 are going to be merged together. So if we grab our merger here, we're going to merge to the center of this one. And then in the third one, we're going to merge forwards facing. We'll then connect these up, and we are merging 15, 30, 45. And then we will also use a splitter here, place it directly in front of this constructor, the 4th one. And so this is going to split 7.5 rods to this direction. So we're going to have 52.5 heading in front here. We are going to do some screws in a moment, but we do need to focus on this area. We actually need to make this 50. So we have in this constructor one split here, and we need, currently that will be 7.5 if we split it in two. But because we need a third, so 5 rather than 15, we need 5. So we're going to have to split 10 and 5. Because of that, we're going to send 5 this way, and we're actually going to place a merger directly to its left. And we're going to connect this with a Mark 1 belt. And then the front-facing output of the splitter is also going to merge with this merger. Now, if you can't connect these, this red illegal placement, what you can do is just switch it to the default mode by pressing R. It's just a bug. We're then going to place another merger in front of this, and this time we're going to merge the 10 rods that we have here with the 15 here, and just in front of this one, facing the top of the grid, another 15. So at the moment we have 40 iron rods in this section, and we have 60 in this one. And this is where our screws come in. So directly in front of here, we are going to place in the center of the next grid. Wow, we can do it here on this line. So about half a foundation in front. We are going to place a constructor in front of us, and we're going to place 2 to the left and 2 to the right. Each of these are going to be set to screws, and they're each going to be running at 100% clock speed. We're not going to worry about that. You can't do it at the moment, but we'll talk about that in a future episode. And from here, we're going to split between the 5 screw constructors, the rods. Ooh, actually, so that we don't get any clipping, we'll push this up to the edge here. This isn't really a load balance because the first splitter is going to get the most amount of resources, but we are going to distribute from the center outwards. From here, let's connect the power again. We can use this center section here. In fact, we can, let's leave that just in case we need that in a little bit. We'll run it to here. And at this point, we can connect it together, and looking at our grid, you can see we have surpassed our capacity. So the max consumption at the moment is 92. So before we turn this on, we are going to have to expand this power section a little bit more, but let's not worry about that just yet. Now this first screw constructor, we don't really need to worry about this. So we're going to just move the resources to the right for this one. And for this section, we're going to build, if we place an assembler just in front here, we're going to be building our reinforced iron plates. Now this is going to need 60 screws per minute as well as 30 iron plates, which just so happens to be how many iron plates we have in this constructor here, or this merger here. So what we're going to do first and foremost is we're going to place our conveyor lift, and it's going to face the left, or the right of the grid if you're looking from it this way. Now I do know it's getting very dark, so we're going to just connect this up, and we're going to leave it until the next morning for us to continue this build. Now that it's daytime, I have deleted this belt here. So we're going to place the assembler once again, and we're going to do this so that our assembler is in line. Actually, our assembler's input line, this one here, is going to be in line with this middle section of the foundations. From here, we will grab our conveyor elevator, and we're going to run it in straight mode, taking our iron plates, the 30 that we've split off, into our reinforced iron plate assembler. However, we may have the 30 iron plates, we now need our 60 screws per minute. For that, we have our screw line here. We've already taken 40 off. This is going to go to storage. And here we're going to need 60. And to get 60, we have to merge one constructor and a half. So we're going to have to take 20 from here. To do that, place your splitter directly in front of the middle constructor. And then we're going to place a merger so that it's facing along the line. And now you can see why we've done that. So that it goes straight into this assembler. And just connect these up. So this is now receiving the 60 screws and the 30 iron plates that it needs to run, and is running efficiently. And we're going to split some of the resources to storage, and then, well, half over to the next assembler, which we're about to build. And we will place that, move it slightly ahead, probably into this position. In fact, if we really want to, we could probably place it there. In front of the middle constructor, we've got half being sent to the merger on the right, if you're looking from the top down. But we also need to send 20 in this direction also to our other assembler. And then we're going to place another merger facing the top. Now, this section is going to require Mark II belts because we're going to need to place, in fact, I'll tell you what, we'll place it so that it's facing the left. We'll try and make this clean, which means we'll have to use another elevator for this section. This belt here will need to be upgraded to Mark II. We've already got the reinforced iron plates facility here. We can turn this on first so that we're generating those reinforced iron plates that you need. Also notice that the output, or one of the outputs, is going to feed into this assembler here. We'll do the rest of that one in a moment, but this is going to be producing the rotors. Alongside the 100 screws, we're going to need 20 iron rods. So what we need to do here is build a splitter. We'll place an elevator. So here we can just turn this to the left, and then this one forwards. And then in the straight mode, we can just connect these two up. Nice and clean. And then we have another 20 iron plates, iron rods, sorry. And these are going to go to storage. So I'm just going to have them face the top of this grid. Now at this point, once you've got the Mark II belt, until then, you can run this and it will just run at 75% efficiency. No, not even that. 60% efficiency, because it will only be getting 60 screws per minute until you upgrade that. So you can like just run it as is, but the sooner you upgrade to Mark II belts, the better. From here, we are going to split this like we did with the assembler just over there. And then we're going to run this all the way down here and into this assembler here. This assembler is going to be producing smart plating. It only needs 2 reinforced iron plates and 2 rotors per minute, which means we have 2 rotors here that can go to storage. And we have 2.5 reinforced iron plates going to storage. So we now have our iron rods, our rotors, our first space elevator parts, our reinforced iron plates, and our screws, as well as our iron plates, all ready for storage. We'll sort them out in a moment, but first let's connect all of this to the power infrastructure. And here we can see that we have 137 megawatts max consumption and only 90 megawatts capacity. So what we will do at this point, before we hook it all up, is set up our storage, and then we're going to do another row of biomass burners. So now we're going to do our storage, and we're going to keep it really nice and simple for this. I am just going to place in this end section here a container right in the center with it all facing the top. And at this point, I recommend adding another foundation in front, because you're going to be able to grab all of the resources from this area. And we are going to just bring the resources up through into these individually. Later on, we will sort out some way to create an awesome sink system, but we won't worry about that just yet. One thing to bear in mind with the straight mode is that depending on which way you go, it will dictate where the turn is. So for this, we're going to place it this way around. We're then going to bring across our final resource, the iron plates. And this here means that we have got all of our iron set up for storage. This is a perfect starting system for anyone getting started in the game. Next, we need to sort out our power, because obviously we cannot run this factory at 137 megawatts and only 90 capacity. Once again, I'm going to assume that we haven't unlocked the Mark II belts yet. And from here, we're going to keep it really simple. I'm not going to go into any load balancing just yet. All we're going to do is place our biomass burners so that they are to the right, or to the left, sorry, of what we've just placed, making sure that we've got enough room for the splitter. And then from here, we are going to place these. So we've got the splitter feeding into these three, and this is balanced between the 6 now. So you will have this splitter splitting in half between these two, and we have it evenly distributed between those 3 and between these 3 as well. And at this point, we have doubled our capacity to 180 megawatts. So at this point, we're going to bring our iron into this facility. And I'm going to try and keep this as simple as possible. So we're going to place a foundation here, and we're going to add our conveyor elevators just at the bottom here. We'll start off with one in the middle, just so that we can align everything. And we're going to want this to go roughly the same height as the top of there, if we can make it. So you may have to run all the way around to get to the location and try and judge whether it's the right height for you. But as you can see, we haven't removed the conveyor lift from our build menu or build placement, which means that we should be able to still see where it is roughly coming up. And we're going to want to place it about here. And we can see that it's costing 40 iron plates, which means we can judge roughly where it is. So that is 40. We're going to place it there, and then we're going to bring this up via vertical belt, vertical placement. And then we're going to go to zoop mode and bring this across to our facility. And this is just going to be a very simple way to keep your belts nice and clean whilst bringing resources into the base. And this is a fantastic start to your logistics. It keeps everything nice and clean. Remember, it was, oh, I've done something wrong here. I've only just realized, but it's fine. When you're placing your conveyor lift, you can see the input and the output. Obviously, we need the green arrow to head towards our smelters. Now, when you've placed it like this, you can swap it over by pressing R. That will allow the inputs to change. But on the other one, I have unfortunately forgotten to do that, so we're going to have to redo it now. If you want to get this in the perfect position, but you find that it keeps snapping to the other elevator, you can either connect these up like so, it just makes it easier, or you can snap it in place by pressing H, and then from here using the left, right, forward and back keys to get it in the right position. One thing to bear in mind is that there is 2 increments at each level. So that's 40, that's 40. So you are going to have to eyeball it a little bit, but you should be able to connect these up. And then the one thing that we also need to do is to get power up there as well. Now, eventually we can unlock a way of doing this easier through power wall joints, but we can just place it up there for now. So we're at the top and we need to get our iron ore to this segment. Now we have two options. We can either harvest other iron nodes in the area, or we can take from the iron nodes that we already have. Now with a bare bones factory, we are going to eventually tear it down. So it is fine to grab the iron ore from there. But if we have enough iron ore nearby, we might as well tap into them. So we have 2 nodes here, we need 3. Well, there's a load over there. So we will grab these 2 and then 1 of these. So first, let's run our foundations to roughly where we want them, like so. And we are going to also use a ramp just to make it a little bit of a smoother transition. I quite like to use single 1 meter ramps. From time to time, if you're building, you may find that you cannot build because there is a creature in the way, or like in this circumstance. If that's the case, you can just prod it. Unfortunately, I don't have my zapper with me, and it should run out of the way. Now at this point, we're ready to collect or place our miners. Now, how do you keep it clean? Well, there are ways in which you can merge the miner to the grid. Well, you can't get it to snap to the grid, but you can merge the miner quite cleanly to this through a little bit of work. But what I recommend more often than not is that you enter straight mode, because this will allow you, though it may not be straight at the point where it's exiting the miner, it will snap to the grid this side. What you can also do to encourage it to look a little bit better is by turning it so it's facing away from the grid where you want to have it built. And then from here you can see we can bring that over to here. So we're going to place this one in the middle. We're going to bring it to this section here. And this one is going to rest next to this one. Now let's run these back. It's going to take a lot of resources, at least initially. And you are also going to need to connect this to power as well. But don't worry, you should have more than enough with what we've just set up. Now you don't need to place your conveyors on these foundations. It's a lot of extra resources, but I just find it's a great way to keep everything clean, but you can do it how you want. We're also going to grab another node. We'll do it from this side for the time being. And we're going to, once again, bring it out and use straight mode to send. Yeah, you see, this is where it's done something a little bit weird. It's not really doing what we want it to do. We can try placing down our belt first and then doing that from this side. There you go. Or you can try using default mode, but it seems to work. So we now have our resources. Let's get them back to the base and see it start producing our iron. That way we'll be able to unlock our Mark II belts and get started with the next of the facility, which will be the concrete, followed by our copper. Okay, so with that turned on, we can see our iron is starting to come out. We're also harvesting the iron over there. The bare bones factory is up and running again, so we're just going to leave that to do its own thing. And we're going to head down there and see the iron switch on. And here we are. As you can see, everything is starting to turn on. We've just been waiting for the middle section of rods and plates to turn on because it was waiting a while for the resources to come in. But everything is starting to turn green, and we're starting to produce everything that we intended. The only thing, of course, is that we do need to remember to upgrade this line when we get chance. It's already fully saturated with the 60 screws per minute, and that means that probably this is starting to fill up, or maybe the ones before. Yeah, you can see there. They're struggling to come through. But we've got our rods going into storage, our rotors being sent to become smart plating, and there's our first smart plating. And there should be, yeah, we've also got some rotors in storage there. We have our reinforced iron plates going across to become smart plating as well. And we're having some sent to storage. So this is really setting you up for the early game, bringing you in all the resources that you need to get started with building, except for, of course, concrete and copper, which we're getting onto now. With our iron complete, we now need to expand on this grid because we are going to be building our concrete factory. However, the first thing that we need to do before that is actually to clear this area. This is actually going to be really useful because it's going to provide us with lots more wood and foliage for us to put in our biomass burners. So let's just get rid of these really quickly. Okay, with this all cleared, we're now going to start working on the next section, which is going to be concrete. This is a really simple one. So all I'm going to do is zoop a space in between this section. This is going to allow us to have a nice clear pathway to walk along, and we'll also do some very basic, and I have to stress basic, decor just to make the factory line a little bit cleaner when we're walking through. And now we're going to place a really simple, it's going to be a 2 wide grid on top of the one that we've just done here, which is our walkway through. So we'll just do one there and the second one like so. So the first thing that we want to do, because this is concrete, we are going to be bringing in limestone, and it's going to go to 2 constructors. It is a really easy, in fact, we'll keep these in line with this, but it is just these 2 concrete constructors. We'll set them to concrete, and you'll notice that they require 45 limestone per minute. Well, we can't underclock, and there's no point doing complex load balancing this early in the game, so we're just going to grab 2 limestone ore nodes and belt them into this. So I'm going to grab one from the factory up there, that one over there, and then I'm going to grab another one from a limestone just across there using the same technique. So I'm going to very quickly build a bus line over there and bring it back. And then we'll feed the resources into here, and we will output it on the other side to a container just over here. Now, the reason that we're using 2 constructors worth, it may seem a little bit overkill, but we are going to use a lot of concrete later on in the game, and having 30 limestone or 30 concrete per minute is going to be really helpful in sustaining our building. We're then going to do the same system with our power. Just connect it up and then connect it to the next constructor line across. This way of daisy chaining is just really simple in the early game. You don't need to worry about hiding your wires, and it looks pretty clean. But I'm going to quickly get started on bringing the resources over, and then we'll get started on the next section. At this point, we have our limestone coming to here. You can see it all the way in the distance. Took me just a few minutes to sort out. And now we need to bring the other one from up there. Now this is going to present a little challenge for us, and that is to get the limestone across to this side of the belt to bring it along here. And the reason that we want to do that is because if we have it on this side, we're going to have to bring it all the way across. And yes, there is a solution, just bringing it up over an elevator. But I thought it would be better to show you how I may approach a challenge if I want it underneath. So let's get up there. Now the challenge is that we have our miner on the opposite side, and we can bring it over the top, but given that we have a little gap down here, it might be even more interesting to play around with the shape here. So I'm thinking that we will grab our smaller 1 meter foundations. Remember to use the E to open the radial dial. I'm going to just bring that across and create a little gap for us to bring the resources across to. From here we can then run this section Ooh, I have managed to build the foundation inside of me. It's a slight bug in 1.0. And then from here, we're going to run this just up to that location, and we can use one of their ramps for this. So let's go with the 1 meter, which is very smooth. And our intention is going to be to hide the rock. So we're just going to bring it up to about the same height, about here. Grab our 4 meter foundation. We're going to place this under. Now you can build a miner on top of a foundation, which is useful because we can then use it to snap or blend it to the world grid. But we'll talk about that in a later video. By the way, if there's anything that you feel I'm missing in this video, please do let me know. There are things that I will be talking about later on, like the difference between manifolds and balancers in more detail. But this should just be used to get you up and running, to get you started with the game. And then hopefully we'll be able to cover the rest later. So at this point, we are bringing the resources down. I'm going to connect that to that section of the factory, and we can now bring this through. In fact, we could do it here and then run this alongside this section here. However, we do have an issue with the terrain being slightly raised up. So if we were to continue like this, you can see we've got the terrain in the way. It's not necessarily a difficult problem to solve. What I'm going to do is start our little straight platform here, then we're going to run it across, and hopefully that'll be, as you can see, just enough. And we can bring this down again nice and straight using the straight build mode. And we're going to bring this tight against the side in case we want to bring the copper along here as well, because the copper will be the next section that we work on. From here, we are going to jump all the way down. Don't worry about the distance, providing there's no enemies below you. You can jump from any height, providing you have full health, and you won't die, although I think I've got God mode on. Whoops. Yeah, I apologize. From here, we're going to run this all the way across. Now, one thing I will point out here, this here is a node deposit. It's bauxite, it's a late game material. We don't really need to worry about it just yet. However, you'll notice that if you're trying to build over this, you can't unless you zoop over it. And the other option is we can get rid of it. Same with the little deposits on top of our iron and copper and coal nodes, or any nodes for that matter. We can break this down. It'll just take a few moments. At this point, we're going to bring this along. And because we may bring more ore up, it would be good to keep this hugging the belt. So if we do this, we snap it in place holding H. If we needed any other resources to come along here, we have this space. Or if we wanted to run along here, we have this space to run along. So it's quite good to snake and hug the other sections. However, for this, I think we can get away with doing this. Yeah, it's not clipping. We're going to run it straight into our... Ooh, we're 1 plate short. I'm just going to grab one off the belt. And we will have the limestone being brought to, as you can see, down here into our factory. And we're keeping it relatively clean. We're not doing anything advanced with the design at the moment, but it is enough to get your factory started. If we do bring down the copper from up there, we're going to do something a little bit different. So we'll probably use a logistics floor, just so that you get a basic understanding of it. Though I don't think we'll need to, because we do have a copper node over here that's probably going to be more useful for our circumstances. But anyway, you now have your concrete being automated, and this can be sent to your storage for use later on, such as building the foundations or maybe decorations, which we'll get onto shortly. Let's move on to copper. In the early game, we are not going to need that much copper. So for this, we are going to do quite a small factory, not quite as small as this one, but this factory line, we're going to first have a space in between like we did before, just to keep it nice and clean. And then we're going to do a 7 grid wide. And this is going to be just a total of 6 grids deep, although we're going to run it all the way to the end because we want to have all of our storage up at that end. Now this is a very simple build. We're going to start off with 2 smelters. So we're going to want to place it in line with these ones really. And we're going to place it in the, not this column that's breaking up this factory just to keep it clean, but in the 3rd column. That should be about right. I think we need to bring it forwards just a touch more. We are going to do a second one next to that as well in the center of the column. It will all make sense in a moment. From here, we are going to have to produce our wire, and that's for both of these. So we're going to place a constructor in line with the other constructors. We're going to have 2 to the left and 2 to the right. Again, we still have this space in the middle. And then from here, we're going to place a splitter directly in front of our smelters, with one line going directly into the constructor and the other one in straight going out to the one to the side. This is just like the ones that we did for the iron rods earlier. Next, set the copper. Remember, we're going to copy and paste this. And then from here, we are going to run a splitter into the 2nd one. And we're going to place another splitter 2 foundations apart. You'll have to beg my pardon. I did my maths wrong. We're going to have to go a little bit further out. So 2 more. So in front of this splitter, we're going to place another smelter. Again, in line with the other ones. We're going to place another one next to that too in the middle. We're just keeping these middle separations. You could do it tighter, but it just looks cleaner, especially given that they're going to go straight into some more constructors. So in front of here, we're going to place 3 constructors in a line, and these are going to be set to copper sheets. And you can see here they need 20 per minute, and these produce 30 each. So we have 60 copper ingots being produced, which means we are going to have to merge, maybe a little bit tight. We can move this a touch closer. There we go. So if it's this tight, it will work. You just need to make sure that you're placing the conveyor into the right input. And then we're going to place our splitter directly in front of our merger, heading straight into the middle constructor, and then either side to our copper sheets. So now we should be able to produce 30 copper sheets from those 60 ingots. And in front of the first 4 constructors, sorry, we are going to set it to a wire. Once again, we're going to use the same powering technique, keeping it nice and simple. And then these are going to be connected whichever way you prefer. On the output side, we're going to need 1 section. Let's go with this one, merging. So let's connect this together, and we're going to connect it with 1 constructor producing the copper wire. And then we're going to place another constructor just a little bit in front. We're going to try and keep the lines with the one in along, which was for the screws. Again, this is just to keep it clean. You can keep these as tight or as sparse as you like. This is just how I run my systems. This constructor is going to be set to produce cable. So this is taking 60 wire from the 2 constructors before to come out with 30 cable. And this is going to go to storage. On top of this, we're also going to merge these 2 wire constructors. And these are also going to send their wire to storage. And then finally, we have our 60 copper sheets. Right now, you do not need to use them. You will need them when we get started with automated power, which will come in the next one, as well as when we're talking about AI limiters. Now, it sounds advanced, but do not worry. This is going to be really useful for the next one. In fact, we will probably set that now rather than merge them all together. We will have a splitter placed in front of the first one. And then we will have a merger in front of the middle one. To replace a placed splitter merger, when you have the other item, so in this case the merger selected, hold Control and you can just replace it. I'm trying to teach you all of the little tips as we go, because there are a lot of things the game doesn't share with you. But if I do miss something or I gloss over something very quickly, please let me know and maybe we'll return to that. But here we have a line. This will eventually go to your AI limiters, which we'll cover in the next episode. And this one will be sent to your storage for the time being. So with that in mind, let's set up the storage and then we'll bring the resources over. Now this factory may look very open and sparse, but I think this is just the easiest way to keep it nice and simple. And then if you want, you can adjust this as you see fit. Also, given that we can't produce those AI limiters just yet, what I will do is just merge that line over here. That way it's all going to storage and not backing up. Okay, well there you are. That is everything that we need to cover in terms of production. I do need to connect these up. However, we do also need to expand our power a little bit as well. So as you can see, the production at this point, it's okay. Our max consumption though is through the roof. That includes the factory up there though. So we're going to expand the power next. But first, let's bring the copper over. So for this, we are going to need a total of 120 copper. Using the scanner, holding V as we covered in the previous episode, we can scan for ore. And I noticed I was going to use the ore node over here, but I found two that are normal just slightly across. So that works out much better for us rather than using the impure one, because that will only produce 30 copper ore for us. I'm going to harvest both of these ones and bring them back to base. On your journeys, you may find things like this. By all means, collect them. You are going to need them later on. Just make sure to save them somewhere, like for example, in your hub storage, just so that you don't lose them. We have bussed the copper back to our factory, but we're in a bit of a predicament because we have the limestone here and I don't really want to move anything, though it doesn't matter. We could just delete that. It's not an issue. But what I thought I'd show you is a logistics floor and what that is. So a logistics floor is a floor that is dedicated solely to solely for the purpose of our items get from one part of the factory to the next. And so what we're going to do is run a very basic system. So this is our floor. Normally I would recommend that you have at least 6 meters, but this is just a 4-meter logistics floor. And from here we're going to bring these down like so, and this one across here. Now we can cover that, and that's not going to affect the resources going down. However, you can, well, you might not like the clipping, in which case there is floor holes. For now, I'm just going to leave it like that. I'm not too bothered. Now it is dark, so all you need to know is that I'm taking the resources along to the factory now. Once we get to the other end, I will show you what we're going to do. Okay, so I'm just removing the foundations here so that I can see where our resources are. I'm going to remove this. This is our splitter that's leading into the smelter, and I think we've got another one just a little bit further down the line here. And what we're going to do is place our elevators just here so they're in line with the conveyors, and then we're going to bring them, the conveyors that is, all the way to the smelters. And this is just a very basic logistics floor. Normally you'd have lots of resources going along them. We'll talk about what a manifold is at a later date, as you don't need to know about it just yet for this video. It's just another way of feeding resources, or you can do load balancing, which is our preferred system in this particular video. But we will cover manifolds most likely in the next one. We're going to leave the holes there for now. We're going to wait for the copper, and then afterwards we need to cover power. And here we can see it's all starting to turn on. We have all of our copper coming up and heading to our constructors, where we're having the copper sheets going. Well, right on time. I did say we needed to talk about power. So if we quickly go over to our power setup, if you remember rightly, we did say that we had a higher consumption than we were currently providing for. So if we go over here, what has happened is the power that is being consumed by our factory is outpacing the power our grid's producing. So what we're going to do here is build another 3 gens, and we're going to feed these, and we're going to bring this and connect it to the splitter over there. Now this splitter can only split into 3, and this is where we're going to have to rework this, because all we can do at the moment is take this up and bring the resources over to this one, and I don't think that's going to look too nice. We can push this back a little bit if we wanted to. And now I should mention that doing this will work perfectly fine. We can do this, we can bring the resources up to here via the splitter. You can see the excess that was stored in this buffer is now being sent to here, and we will be able to flick the switch on for our power. That's not going to be a problem. The problem is that we won't be able to scale the system up anymore without expanding on this. And the plan is to show you how to perfectly load balance to the max capacity of a single constructor producing the solid biomass fuel. So this is 9 generators of a potential 15 generator setup. So we're going to just turn this on really quickly, and then we will look at expanding this and optimizing it so we can expand it at a later date. Those are pretty funky solid biofuels. So now that the factory is running and we've expanded all the way up to here, we are going to switch this all off. We're just going to pull the plug like so, and don't worry about this. What we're going to do here is tear all of this down. Now I'm going to multi-delete by holding Control and hovering over everything that needs to be deleted. And we are going to do a very similar setup to what we've done here. I think it's quite neat. Normally I do it in 3 sets of 5, but I think I prefer 5 sets of 3. If you accidentally delete or hover over something to be deleted, you can just press Control over it again so that it doesn't get deleted or it gets unselected. And once we have selected everything, we can delete it all by holding left mouse button all at once. It's free to delete things, which means it's important, I'd say, to regularly go over and delete things and rebuild them. Don't be too precious about your builds. You'll build them better, I assure you, the second time round. I'm actually going to delete the excess stuff that we have here. It's just going to make sure that we have plenty of space, because if our space fills, you will find one of these boxes of shame on the floor, and you will see that on your map as well. And we're going to repeat the build that we did at the start with the splitter, heading in to the biomass burner on either side with a line heading down the grid. Then we're going to repeat this again another 4 times. So let's build a load balancer for these 15 gens. Now we're using a load balancer because it spreads the resources between all the outputs. So we have a total of 15 generators here. We don't want half going to this set of 9 and half going to that set of 6. because the set of 6 are going to receive more resources. We'd rather send it so that each biomass generator receives a single item at a time equally. That way it keeps everything on for longer. Now you can use manifolds, but they may force your setup to run out of power sooner simply because they have a slower speed up time. We're going to place our first splitter in the middle of this section, and then we're going to split this into 2 sections. The first section is going to be placed in front of the middle input to the second of the first 3 lines of generators. And then either side we're going to set up the outputs for the other 2 sections. We're then going to connect the input of this splitter with one of the outputs from this splitter, and we're then going to do the same on this side. However, we're going to place the splitter in front of the second generator. This will not balance if we connect this back to here, because as I mentioned before, we will have half the resources in the left hand section and half in the right. So we are going to go with a balancer. Normally you can add, providing you have a fast enough belt, a merger at the start of the line and then recycle the 6th line from that splitter back to the start. However, because we have a max throughput of 60 resources and we're consuming 60 resources, we cannot feed back to the start. Instead, we'll have to remove this and place a merger here, and we're going to set it up with a elevator just facing the opposite side. We're then going to place another merger in front of this one, and then for this section we are going to place a splitter facing back down to the start of the grid. We'll then connect one of the outputs into this section, so this is going to send half of its resources back to the start of this, and it's going to send the other half over to the other section. So we're going to take the second output and run that back over to the other section. Now it's quite fast, so we are going to have to lift this belt up. So once you place it on the floor, you can point upwards, and the second click will place it. You can delete that afterwards if you want. We're then going to connect one of the entrances of the mergers with the start of the splitter here, and we're going to do the same on the other side, and there we go. We have a perfect load balance. Oh, that was quite a bit of work. For the next section, we're going to want to have our solid biofuel constructors. Now, we're going to use 3 in this circumstance, and that's because later on when we have the Mark II belts, which we should be able to do now, we're going to upgrade these. But all this is going to do if these overfill is fill up their solid biofuel outputs and wait until it needs more resources on the line to send it through. In front of this far right one, we're going to place 2 constructors. These are going to be set to leaves biomass, and as you can see, these will produce 100 between them 60 each, or 120 in total, and we can merge these together and feed them into this constructor. You will need to unlock the Mark II. I haven't done that yet, but I could do that right now if I wanted to, but I'm going to show you this first. Next to here, we're going to place 2 more constructors. These are going to be fed by the wood, and we're going to use the Mark II conveyors. Still, we can not keep up with the 300 per minute of biomass production, but we can have 120 going straight into our solid biofuel setup, which of course is how much it needs. So set these to Mark II belts as well, and both of these will be set to wood. Now the wood needs to enter at 60 per minute. So we're going to grab a splitter and place that in front of these 2 constructors, and then we can have our container dedicated to wood. We'll have to make sure that we keep filling this up. The leaves are 120, aren't they? Yeah, so we need 2 separate containers for now for the leaves. And again, these would be Mark II belts rather than Mark I. And we would split our leaves between the 2. and our wood here. And then that is ready to go. So now all we need to do is give these a bit of a kickstart with all of this solid biofuel that we have. Don't worry about the trip. We will reset the fuse shortly. And we're also going to fill up these constructors with the biomass that we have spare so they can start producing that solid biofuel right away. And from here, we are going to turn these on by clicking on a power pole and then pulling the fuse down. Now, as you can see, we are producing the power that we need. This is going up and down because the factory is only drawing this much energy at the moment. But remember, we do have a capacity of 450. We can see the solid biofuel load balancing. It's heading where it needs to, splitting between each of the lanes, which is exactly what we needed to see. And then you can see the solid biofuel here running across to the other side to be used up. So there you go. This is all going to start turning on, and we are now ready to do a tiny little bit of decorating. And by decorating, what I mean is really just to play around with the walkways, just to make it a little bit cleaner for us. So we're going to grab our basic walls, and we're going to run this just along where we see a walkway. So I'm going to do it all the way across here. And we're just segregating the factory from us. We can run this under the belt as well if we want. And we're going to run that all the way to the front here to where our storage is. Now at this point, we are producing our iron, our screws, our reinforced iron plates, our smart plating, our rotors, rods, concrete, cable, wire, and finally our sheets. So we've done a pretty good setup here today. Also, we do want a little space down here. Now in the next episode, we are going to be covering how to design the factory a little bit better in terms of looks. But more importantly, we are going to be covering some other production lines. We'll be sending off the first space elevator tier and doing a few other things such as unlocking the awesome shop, awesome sink, and doing, I should imagine, a little bit of exploration. But for now, let's finish off with cleaning this. Ooh, we're going to need some concrete. We'll run a walkway down here as well. If you want, if you'd like to see it from above, you can use the lookout towers. They're also very useful if you're wanting to gain an upper hand when building. And we'll probably also talk about, I should mention, in the next one, some steel setups as well. But if you want to jump ahead, I have attached my first steel basics layout guide in this playlist so that you can jump ahead and do that should you wish to. That should provide you everything you need to get you started. But guys, there we are for that one. I hope you found it helpful. If you did, please do hit the thumbs up. And if you want to see more, don't forget to subscribe. I'm really looking forward to getting into the meat of all of this in the future videos. But guys, until next time, thank you so much for watching, and thank you so much to all of our amazing supporters on Patreon, most notably our Lunar Eclipse Patrons, Firefless the Calamity, Ben and Star, and our Blood Moon of the day, which today is Jenny. Until next time, as always, ciao for now.